Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Fola Alabi.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to another fantastic episode on the Strategic Project Leader. That's right. Projects are the engines of progress that paints that invincible picture and help you achieve your goals in business, in your careers, even in your personal life as well. Today is a great day because I'm also back home, back in Canada. So it's definitely great to be here today. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about a very, very interesting topic that's really, really dear to my heart. For those who are just catching us for the first time, I'm Fola Alabi. I'm your host, the Strategic Project Leader. I'm all about helping you leverage the superpowers in project management, but with a strategic focus to help you elevate and create not just the life you crave, the career and everything in between that comes with that. Today I have a wonderful guest. This has been long coming, I must tell you. I remember we did what's it called? A training together, and when I caught him, I'm like, geez, doctor, you need to come on this podcast. He is a TED speaker, he's a project leader, and he's one that's got a passion, not even just for projects, but also to help improve when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It's with great pleasure that I actually introduce Dr. Emad Rahim. Dr. Rahim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How you doing? And welcome back home.
I know. Thank you so much. I remember when we had a conversation when I was in transit in Toronto, and I'm like, goodness, I'm so tired, but we have to do this, right? Anyway, this is definitely happening. How are you doing? And how is New York today? Because you are joining us from New York.
Yeah, I'm doing great, but I'm in, when people hear New York, they think New York City, right? So I'm in upstate New York. So I'm closer to probably an hour away from the borders of Canada. So we have, it's like Canada, right? We have lots of snow, lots of wind, we worry about the wind chill factor, those things that
That's
no one else
right.
has to worry about.
That's right. I know. Because when you think about Canada, it's just about the cold. Like everyone says, what are you doing in Canada? So it's great to have someone that's just so close that you understand exactly, I wouldn't say the struggles, but the love of, skiing and everything that comes with that when it comes to the weather as well. So great to have you. I want to just first of all give you your flowers for all the great work you actually do in the community when it comes to change and projects and diversity and inclusion as well. And today is a very, very, different one because we want to dive into execution. I think about this because when it comes to projects in life, I feel nothing changes until we actually implement and execute, period.
Yeah,
However, when we think about projects, people kind of feel that, yes, I think it's just this grand piece where we have to start something, we have to do something, but how do we get it done? So, doctor, from your experience, think about what you wish you knew 10 years ago. When it comes to project execution, where do we really start?
Well, the funny thing is we've been spending, I would say, like the last 15 years focusing on planning, right? Because we felt a lot of people, kind of overlook planning and rush in planning because they want to jump straight into execution. And we kind of been beating in the head for the last 15 years in education and training and in corporations saying, hey, slow down and spend some more time on planning. And then now on the opposite end, when we feel like people are spending too much time on planning and not enough time in being
Executed.
Right. So it's like the opposite end. And I think that's where the struggle is. So to answer your question, I wish I knew how to delegate roles and responsibilities better. Right. I think traditionally many project managers, we specialize within our industry, right? We are engineers, we are programmers, we're construction workers, and we become really good at this thing. And then we accelerate in being a part of a project, right? And because we've done so good on that project, we were asked to lead the next project. And that's often how many people become project managers. But in the prior role, you didn't lead that project, right? You were part of a larger team. So you're great at the technical skills, but often struggle with that soft skills. You've never been able to mature in that soft skill. So it's kind of like a trial and error, like just jumping right in. And when I first took on the role as project managers, I pretty much burned. Like I fell apart, right? Because you want to do your best, and you know what you know, but you don't know what everybody else knows,
That's
right?
right.
And my first few projects, I was worried about, maybe people taking, more of the credit than I would, right? People may be overstepping their boundaries, people trying to take over my leadership role, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I communication was somewhat an issue. I didn't share everything, right? And which means they didn't share everything. We didn't gel right, right? So we did a good job planning and creating an amazing project plan that the stakeholders love. But then when it came to execution, we were not on the same page, right? And I thought that if I did what I did previously, which just focused on my lane, right, this project would be amazing, right? And allow other people to kind of focus on their specialization, like give them some autonomy, and they will shine also. But I forgot that I was the leader of this project. So if I'm not communicating and they're not communicating and everybody's kind of like in their own lane and silos, the project is doomed to fail. So that I think that's one of the things that I notice other people are struggling in. It's like we are great in working on projects, but that shift into being a project manager and showing the leadership, growing that leadership skills, maturing in that emotional intelligence, those key soft skills are often the thing that we struggle with.
100%. You spoke about, evolving and becoming like great leaders, because this is the foundation of what we do on the strategic project leader, is helping project managers become strategic project leaders. Because a lot of the time, you graduate from university, you get into a role, and you just find out, goodness, I never realized that I was actually project managing because I've had to work in this particular project. And then, as you said, you become promoted. And at times people get promoted to the level of incompetence, where it's a case of, yeah, they have all of this they have to do. And how do they get it done? And it's like so many fires. And how do you get there? And we want to ensure that people are given the skills where they don't only just execute and get things done, but they're comfortable to do this and they can actually get the results that they want. And the shift that is needed for PMs who just don't think about just the budgets and the cost and the quality, but they don't focus on everything that comes in. You spoke about communication, you spoke about the leadership piece, because it goes beyond just getting things done. You need the people to get the job done. People need to be excited about the work that's actually been done. People need to understand the vision of where we're even trying to get to and why we're even doing that in the first place. I just, remember a conversation that I had with a project manager who said, yes, I've got a mandate, I've got a charter, and I'm just gearing on to deliver that. And I asked him, like, what exactly does your team think about this project and why are you really doing this? And he's like, oh, okay. I think the why is stated in the charter. We already have a business case that says we need to implement a new IT system. But a lot of the time, I think there's a gap when it comes to vision as to the reason why projects are really being done, and that strategic alignment back to the organization's strategic goals and objectives. How can we get PMs to begin to understand that? Because you can communicate, but getting that connection, back to the bigger picture, I think is absolutely critical. What do you think about that, Doctor?
That's a great observation, and I definitely have witnessed that, right? And especially if you've been on a project for many years, you kind of lose focus on that alignment, right? You end up taking on this project. It became your project, not the client's project. You're like this is what the client really wants, and you never had that conversation with the client. um, I think we need to identify when you should take a temperature check, right? We use these terms, these project management terms, that tie to having these like scrum meetings and things like that, right? But often those meetings are really focused on progress and status versus alignment, right? So this goes back to what you're saying, is that our meetings, we assume that we're in alignment. We assume that
Yeah.
we're all we all are having the same conversation and same vision of this project, and we're so focused on hitting these milestones, right? Hitting these deadlines, that making sure that these objectives are met, that we didn't take a temperature check and say, hey, are we still moving in the right direction with the client, right? Are we kind of gearing away from alignment based on all these changes? Because we know that especially when it comes to technology project, change is rapid, like change is consistent. So you might have to take a temperature check a lot more than say like a construction job, right? Where you have to say, okay, maybe every other week we have to take a temperature check, because within those 2 weeks, we made like 8, 9 major changes to the
That's
scope,
right.
right? So based on those changes, while those changes were needed, while those changes were important because they, impact our budget, impact our schedule, and things like that. But are we shifting away from the alignment of what the client really wants? Are we shifting away, and is the project evolving to something different? Right. So yeah, I definitely agree. But I think the only way we can go back to alignment, right? And we need to make sure we take a temperature check and actually put that into the plan. Like make sure that every 3, 4 weeks, or even every other month, that we go back and take a temperature check and say, hey, we've had these major milestones, right? We hit these major milestones. We did a lot of changes, and then based on these changes, are we still in alignment, right? And if not, what can we do to get back in alignment, right?
That's a good point. And just for people who are actually new in the field of project management, I want to give a little bit of some insights. When we're talking about execution, this is more or less like the next phase. Because when you kick off a project, first, a project is any endeavor that creates an outcome. It's temporary, it's got resources, there's a time frame to attach to that. So for instance, if it's your home reno, an IT transformation, whatever that is, it's got a start and a finish. A lot of the time, according to like PMI, if it's Prince 2, whatever methodology you're actually covering with, you have to start with planning. You have to plan and say, what exactly is it are we trying to actually achieve? You create a plan. But the phase we're focusing on today is about execution, where you take the plan and turn it into something tangible. This is where we get to work, where the rubber hits the road. So just to make that clear. And so myself and Dr. Emad, we're talking about how can we be effective at doing this. He's already given us some great insights around communication and delegation and those soft skills that you need to have, because it goes beyond just a technical know-how. Project managers who are really great at it, who can help organizations achieve goals and objectives, are ones who are strategic, who can actually get alignment to strategic objectives. They're ones who can get the teams to actually coalesce together to get things done. And he's just mentioned a very good point around ensuring that you do a temperature check, because projects are about creating something probably for someone, a customer, a client. So it's not about what you think you want or they want. It's about what they really want. So ensuring that you can actually touch base and check and see, where did we say we were actually going? Are we still in the same bus? Because a lot of the time you may have just head over to New York and I thought we're coming to Calgary. And then we find out that, goodness, we need to go back, reverse and course correct as well. That's absolutely critical. Doctor, when we think about checking things and ensuring that we're in alignment, and you find out that, yes, there's a misalignment, you have to come back and course correct. How have you been able to do that and do that really effectively without actually losing momentum when it comes to team morale? Because a lot of the time when you feel that you have to go back to the drawing board, team members kind of feel, my goodness, you may not have to go and do the rework, or, have to do things differently. How are you able to influence your team, to still stay focused and motivated?
Yeah, I think it's based on the culture of your team, right? You have to identify, those where the problem is, and kind of isolate it, right? It's very difficult sometimes to isolate things like budget because it ties to everything else, right? Sometimes it's difficult to isolate like risk because it's connected with so many things. But if you can identify, first off, if you can isolate it, then you can identify a few members of the team that specialize this, and then say, hey, can you focus on this? Right. So that way the momentum is still going. You're saying, hey, 3 of you, can you focus on this? Because in your lane, right? And then the rest we can keep on going. Right. If we're unable to isolate it and it impacts other aspects of the project, then you have to come back with your team. Right. We're not saying recreate the plan, and we're not pointing fingers, but we have to pivot. Right. And this is the thing when it comes to Agile and Scrum. And I think the project management environment has matured in a really good way, in that we recognize the need for change. We recognize that change is something that's going to happen. So instead of resisting it, I find that newer project managers pivot better, right? They're kind of waiting for it. So instead of like losing morale, like you said, they're kind of gun-ho. They're like excited that you actually notice the change and you're willing to step forward and lead this change versus trying to hide the change or pointing fingers and saying, hey, this person's at fault. This is where the scope, went left, and this group is the problem, things like that. So instead, I think more and more people have this agile framework, right? That they've been taught that they have the skill set, and because of that, they're a lot more nimble, right? They're willing to adjust and make that change and shift. And instead of the morale depleting, right, and losing momentum, if anything, it kind of drives new life, new energy, because people are like, hey, I can rework this, right? I could feel like I could put some innovation and creativity into this, which I maybe couldn't have a few years ago when we started this project, or a few months ago when we initiated the conversation on this project.
I think it's really good when you have, as you said, like the newer PMs who are so excited about agility and being flexible to change. However, when it comes to stakeholders like our sponsors or people who really, really matter and they need to make decisions on the project, how can you really get them to embrace change when you know that this isn't really what they really want? So I think it's a lot of influencing skills that comes into play. How have you been able to influence them? Because you've achieved so much success in your career. What are those? What's the secret sauce to your influencing skill?
I think that the secret sauce is really getting to know your clients, right? Really getting to know your sponsors. I think newer project managers, they find this relationship very intimidating, right? They kind of take the project and they run with it, and they only meet with the client or meet with the sponsor when the client or sponsor says, I need to meet with you. And sometimes, you're kind of sharing what has been done, the progress and status, but you haven't really established a relationship, right? So establishing a relationship is very important, because then the temperament of your clients, right? You know the temperament of your sponsor. You know those buzzwords that they look for, right? You know what to say, what not to say. You know what boundaries you can cross and things like that. In this conversation, it requires you to be on the golf course with them, right? And then this other conversation, we can have some coffee and some cake and things like that. So it's very important to kind of understand your client, understand your sponsor, and figure out the environment where you should have this conversation and how you should have this conversation, right? So throughout the years, what I realize is that I don't push what I believe where the project should lead, right? I kind of highlight the facts and kind of give them worst and best case scenario, right? And kind of lead them to the well, right? So kind of like they're going to make the decisions, right? Because it's their decision at the end of the day, but I want them to come to that conclusion, right? So I'm influencing the directions. I'm like, hey, amazing project, we're doing a lot of great things, but we're starting to move in this direction, right? And I know that you wanted these changes in the scope, and we're definitely willing to support it, but if we do this, it's going to be an extra $200,000, right? So you kind of put that back in there, and then let them think, let them like take that in, like, okay, $200,000. I don't have that $200,000.
That's
So that's
right.
an easy choice for me, right? Or we definitely want to implement it, but it means that we might have to cut some of the scope, right? Because we definitely want this change for you. We believe this change is important because you definitely analyze it. You saw something that we didn't see, and we agree as a team that this change is important. But if we do implement this change, it's going to cut some of the scope, right? And the project may look a little bit different. So what do you think, right? So it's not me telling them; it's always pulling them back into the fold, into the decision-making process, right? But tying it to those things that is important to them, right? Schedule is important to them. So we're running, if we do this thing, we're going to be 8 months late. We're going to be a year late, right? And let them absorb that. Don't rush right away. Let them take that in. Let them analyze that situation, right? Read their face. That's the emotional intelligence piece. Because they're saying, okay, 1 year late, I can't do that, right? I'm going to lose business. It's going to cost me more money. And let them say, okay, I'm going to take that change that I wanted, because that is not as important as hitting the target date that we set, right? So having that, like I said, just making sure you get to know your clients and their temperament, their wants, their needs, those buzzwords, and make sure you create a conversation that allows them to make the decision, right? You don't want to make the decision and have to
For them.
negotiate, right? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah,
Because
that's right. Yeah, I think that's really important. Like understanding what's really important to them and speaking their language. Because you sit in a meeting where you have an executive leader there, and the project you're talking about maybe like a low level risk or issue. When they want to know how does it impact our bottom line? Is this if we actually miss the go live date, for instance? Does that mean we're going to have to spend $3 million more than what we actually anticipated? Or does that mean that, we're going to lose our competitive advantage by getting that product out to market even before our competitors? These are things that are really critical that project managers need to elevate their thinking and their mindset beyond just the rudimentary pieces to now start thinking more strategic, where they understand this is exactly how it affects our business. And this is the language I need to speak when I go to the executive leaders. So when I'm executing, I could pretty much go back and say, these are the options that we need to take. I think that's another great piece around options. So that way they can say, okay, we can go with option one, but it means it's going to be $3 million impact on our timeline, or we could hire more people, crash our schedule, for instance. And that means that it could actually cost us maybe just $1 million, but that way we can get to market even earlier. Giving those options and stuff, I think is absolutely critical. That's pretty great. Doctor, we've talked about the soft skills. We've spoken about understanding the language of our stakeholders so we can present the information. However, there's a piece that I think a lot of PMs struggle with. It's about prioritization. Every time there's always going to be 5 million things you have to do. And you have to keep prioritizing to say, okay, yes, how do I get all of this piece done? We know we have a plan, we have limited resources, but what kind of prioritization skills or techniques have you leveraged through your project management career?
You're absolutely right. And even the most senior project managers have an issue with this. I want to answer this by telling a story. I was part of this project management training years ago, and it's for a pretty large company, and they did a training on how to prioritize. And they kind of put like the red light, green light. I think they follow like, this is green light, this is red light, right? And this is orange light kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So we did all this training and we did all this prioritizing exercise. And then there was a company that one of their competitors went out of business. So it's crazy. In the middle of this training, there's like 3-day training. One of their competitors went out of business, and they're like, okay, we have to like respond to this because we got to take advantage of the clients that we're going to absorb, right? So they pivot, and they're like, okay, we need to focus on this thing. But you just got done saying, for the last 3 months, we need to prioritize. We didn't go through this exercise for this like opportunity, right? So it's like they backpedal, right? So they're like opportunity, and they jumped at it versus executing on this training that they told us, like you need to go through this priority, like process before you make the decision to execute.
Yeah.
This opportunity came in and they didn't even follow the process, right?
They jumped right in.
They jumped right in. And they basically took us away from exercise. So we had a 3-day exercise. They stopped exercise or training in the second day and told us to work on this opportunity, right?
My goodness.
So this is an example of how you also lose the what is it, the trust,
Momentum. Yeah.
the trust of your employees, because they're like, this is what happens. These new leaders come in, new managers come in, and they flip-flop, right? We spend all this money, all this time on this plan, on this strategy, and then like a new opportunity come in, and it's like everything drops, right? We got to take advantage of this. And I think it's very difficult to prioritize, right, if you don't establish that strong relationship with your sponsor and your client, right? Because your priority could be different than their priority. So this goes back to your conversation on alignment, right? That we have to take this temperature check. We put our priorities on paper. We have an agreement on these priorities. every few weeks, every few months, depending on the structure of the organization, we have to look at those priorities again. Have they changed? If so, why? Right? Were they necessary? Right? Did they change because of evolution and maturity? Right? Or they changed because kind of things went haywire or communication was lost? Right? So based on those things, we can take a step back and try to fix it. Right? If we can. Right? We also, as project managers, when you come into a project, it's important to establish the environment you want to work in, right? And let me give you an example, right? Let's say you are a new project manager and you were hired to work on a project. So you're a consultant outside of the organization. So you're not part of the history, right? You don't know the policies and regulations. You're not a full-time employee. So you come into this organization and they have a process where you don't speak to the client, right? The
Yeah.
sponsor is the main driver, right? So you have to communicate all the information related to the project to the sponsor, and then the sponsor communicates to the client, right? That's a bad situation right there,
Yeah.
right? Because any priorities that you put on paper is agreed with the sponsor, but the sponsor will change those priorities based on what the client wants and basically throw it back at you. So you're not part of the negotiation, you're not part of the conversation, right? So if
Mhm.
you are in that situation and you take on that project, you need to be able to negotiate like the best working condition that will make sure everybody's successful to keep those priorities consistent, right? So that goes back to the foundation. We have to make sure the environment that we work on allows us to put priorities first, right? Allows us to communicate the needs of the sponsor, the client, and the team to make sure those their priorities is our priorities, right? But this goes
100%.
back to your conversation alignment. If we don't have these things, we're always going to be out of alignment, and the priorities that you mentioned ties to alignment,
Yeah.
right? At least that's what I believe. When it comes to having a list of priorities for the project, that will let us know if we are in alignment or out of alignment.
100%. I think that's really critical. Alignment always comes back over and over and over again because that's why you find a lot of projects that need to even be stopped. However, they keep going, and later on, you find out, goodness, that was like a failed project or a program. Then I ask the question, right? Throughout the life cycle of this project, were they actually tracking to see alignment in the first place, right? Was this project even still get to deliver any form of benefits? Was it still relevant? That's absolutely critical. But back to prioritization as well, when you look at all of this work and then you check alignment as well, a lot of the times PMs may just say they just 5 billion things, and then there's another project that I've actually been pulled out to do as well. And how do I really cope? In a piece that I have found that has really helped is always thinking about like a ranking, a rank that you even do for your own workload. You look at what exactly are those high impact items that are actually easier to achieve.
Mm.
Because there's always going to be hell and high water every time. But being able to focus on those like big rocks that will move the needle for you and your organization are what will put you on the map and you put it on the map as well. So ensure that you have a way to rank this, because I have like a 4-tier system. I think about high impact, easy to achieve, high impact, harder to achieve, and then low impact, easy to achieve, and low impact, harder to achieve. Just by thinking about these pieces already, you can already tell these are the key things that I think I can do and my team can deliver immediately that could deliver value. And that way, we think about agility and an agile way of delivering value to our customers. They can already see, oh my goodness, this is already great, right? We're already seeing the value of what we actually created. So prioritization is one piece that we all need to embrace over and over. I know you've seen that all through your career because there's always going to be stuff that needs to get done. There's always going to be another stakeholder that needs another piece of work. But how can we ensure that we are just focused on delivering value and doing that consistently? Changing gears from that, when we think about prioritization, Dr. Emad, I want to know how exactly have you been able to pull back a failing project when it came to execution? So you came in, you already saw that things were going off the rails, and you were able to like bring things back and win to get the project back in order? What did you do? And for someone who's actually listening, that they feel that right now, I think this project is obviously a mess. How can I bring things back to ensure that I'm actually successful? How do they get that done?
That, that is a really important skill set, right?
Yes.
I had my fair share of
Yeah.
I also had a lot of failures, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty balanced in my career. Um, in those situations, I think it's very important to make sure you have like real talk,
Mm.
with your team, with your sponsor, with your
Yeah.
client, because you can't pull back if they're not ready to pull back.
Yeah.
Right? If they're resisting, then it's going to continue to fail. It's going to continue to move in this direction. So there's depends on again, it depends on the environment you work in, right? So some some organization environment are very technical, so you almost need like to do like a Monte Carlo simulation to say, hey, look, we're going to derail and it's going to be bad, right? And it's going to be so bad it's going to kill this project and ruin our reputation. And you want to give those analytics, you want to present them and paint like a doom and gloom picture in that situation. But once you do that, you better have a solution ready, right? So
Yeah.
once you paint that doom and gloom situation, you better have like sunshine and rainbows ready for them, because
Definitely. Yeah.
you have to be ready, right? In other situations, it's a negotiation, right? So you don't have to paint the doom and gloom, but you have to negotiate with all the parties, right? So you have to put some time aside and meet with everybody, understand their needs, understand their worries, their concerns, right? Identify, who are the decision makers in the organization as it relates to this project, and make sure you have those one-on-one conversations and do a lot of preparation ahead of time. Don't just jump into the fire, right? Because often that's what we want to do. We see this mistake, we see it's going in the deep end, and we are worried, we're frightened, and we start jumping forward and not being prepared. We know this conversation is needed, but we're not prepared for the conversation. So instead of a negotiation, it becomes a big debate, and no one wins when it comes to project development,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so going back to our original conversation, and I talked about the delegating roles and responsibilities, we have to assess the structure of the original roles and responsibilities, because often sometimes that was the mistake, or that needs to pivot now because the skill set has changed, right? We identified the team that needs to do A, B, C, and D in the beginning of the project, but now we are 2 years into the project, and doing our performance reviews, we realize that team was good in the first 2 years, but now we need a new team, right? Because the project has changed, the scope has changed, right? And that has caused the skill set that the original team that was working on the project, that also needs to shift, right? Because there's so much change in the project. That's what's causing it to derail. It's nothing that the team did wrong. It's just the evolution of the project has shifted in a way where it's basically out of their skill set, right? So having that conversation is important, but make sure you have another team ready, right? But you're able to still pivot and use the current team, so they're not laid off, but you're just basically ready to delegate them to a different part of the work package, right? So those are the buckets that I often look at, and it's important to analyze everything before you jump into the fray.
That sound just means that it's time for Project Lifestyle. Goodness, Dr. Emad has actually dived so deep into a lot of the stuff that I wanted to share today around how we can think about this even in our personal life. First of all, I must say, when it comes to creating a better life for ourselves, I call this the Me Project. I just feel first, I know that the world needs leaders who can create that compelling vision. Like for you, you have a vision and a goal for your life. You feel, I want to create a better career. I want to deliver projects better, in the workplace. And I want to be happier as well. However, it takes being clear as to what exactly you want to achieve. So at the start of every project, it starts with a vision. It starts with a goal. It starts with something that you want to create. And what does that look like for you? I want to challenge you today, who's actually listening to me, to say, what exactly is that vision? What do you really want for yourself? 2023 is already pretty much, I think we've gone through the first quarter already, right? And how exactly have you pictured the path that you want to create for yourself as we dive deeper even into the year. But the key about having a vision, remember when I spoke about the VIP for those who listen to my post that I did yesterday, I spoke about V means having a vision, but with a clear plan. The vision has to be clear so that way everyone around, your spouse, your kids, the family can understand where you want to get to. So this project about creating a better life for yourself or a better career, it has to be crystal clear. And then the plan on how you're going to get there has to be mapped out pretty meticulously. You know exactly what you're going to be doing in the first month, how you're going to do what you're going to do the next month, and what you're going to do thereafter. But the key to doing this always starts with a self-assessment. I always tell people and I say, how have you taken stock of where you are currently at today? What exactly are those areas that you're struggling with? Where exactly do you think you need to leverage your strengths, or you think that you need to get, more strength to pull from things that seem to be a threat to your career, to your life? Identifying these key areas is the first start to ensuring that you create the better life that you've always craved for. Self-assessment. I call this as well a retrospect. I go in very, very often to go back and understand, where exactly am I at? What are the things that are actually not really working well? And where exactly do I need to change and pivot? Because embracing agility is a piece that will help you create something better. You can get lessons learned, you can massage it a little bit and go back to the drawing board, keep planning and keep executing. I want to leave you with this particular piece to say, go off and do an assessment. Create a vision as to what you really want. And then you can easily take stock and say, with this vision, is it clear? Do I have a plan to help me execute on that? And then when you have that vision, you can then create the step-by-step approach as to actually getting there. Because what I've found is it's not as though people don't actually have plans to say, yes, I want to become, a millionaire in the next 2 years. That's great. But why? How are you going to get there? Creating a crystallized vision and a plan to get you there is a step towards the right direction. I cannot wait to hear what you've actually got, probably during the next episode, so we can dive deeper into getting this done. Dr. Iman, when it comes to like vision and execute, especially in personal life, I'm a great proponent of not just being successful at work, but creating a better life as well. What have you got to add when it comes to this as well?
You know what? I do every 3 years, right? Every 3 years, I kind of do like a different like mission statement for myself, right? I don't try to manage my life like a project, right? So when it comes to my career, when it comes to my professional development goals and things like that, I kind of create like a 3 year mission for myself, right? And I envision what that looks like, and what I would the environment I want to be in, kind of like crystallize it, right? Um, but I also want to identify the people I want to take with me, right? Like,
Mm,
because I know that my success is often based on the hard work of other people. Because it takes a lot to make a person like me become successful. Like, a lot of people have to push me forward. A lot of people have to like coach me and mentor me. So I want those people with me, right? You shouldn't be an island when it comes to trying to build success and grow success, that type of thing. Um, so the mission is realistic, right? Is achievable, right? It's sold in regards to working with my mentors and my coaches and say, this is what I want, and they all agree, like, you could definitely do that. This is something that you should work towards of. And like you said, it's something that you can actually create a process, right? You can actually have steps, right? So once I have all those type of things, I identify milestones, those things that I need to achieve in order to reach it, right? And when I'm close to that 3 years, when I'm close to hitting that benchmark, then I can assess it again. Is it, because sometimes things happen in those 3 years and you realize, hey, I don't want that anymore, right?
that's
So it's like,
right.
yep, and that's perfectly fine, right? I think some people, they lose their mind, they lose motivation because they didn't hit those milestones and those goals. But you have to figure out, is it still something I want, right? Maybe that's why I didn't hit them, because my motivation, my passion was no longer there, and I'm actually shifting towards someplace else, right? And if that happens, pivot, right? That's perfectly
That's right.
normal. That's perfectly fine. Don't kill yourself. Don't beat yourself over it. But update that mission, right? Update it, analyze it, assess it, work with your people, and move forward, right? I think we are often our worst enemy, our worst critics, and we often tear ourselves down worse than anybody else could, right? At least that's what I find when it comes to my own problems, right?
That's right. That's right. We at times even when I say celebrating your successes, a lot of the time we beat ourselves up because you feel that you haven't really done enough. And I love the way you pretty much summed it off. It's all about your vision, what exactly you want for yourself. Dr. Iman says he creates a 5-year, a 3-year plan for himself, but for you listening to us, what plan have you got? Things will never change until you actually act on it. Have you taken time to create that plan? Have you taken time to draw the vision of where you really want to get to? Because people feel that I want to become the next vice president of my organization. I want to own my own business. What exactly are your core values and how does that tie back to that goal? And what steps are you taking to ensure that you can actually achieve it? It is possible. As long as you create the plan, you have the right people, as he's actually said, to help you pretty much move up towards the vision and achieve great success. I want to just ask, what are the 3 key things you want to leave us with today before we actually wrap up? We've talked about delegation, communication, alignment. There's just so many pieces there. But what would be the great summary, Doctor, that you want to leave us with today?
Okay, three things. Only 3 things? Okay. First off, right, you don't need to do it alone. Right? I think sometimes we isolate ourselves from opportunities and possibilities because we're trying to do it alone, right? A project manager is only successful if their team is successful, right? So surround yourself with amazing people, with people that push you, that challenge you, right? That always don't paint the doom and gloom, but also provide solutions and opportunities. So surrounding yourself with positive mentors, coaches, and people that you can coach and mentor in your career only makes you stronger, only makes you better as a project manager. Second, don't get comfortable, right? Projects are changing. The work environment is changing, right? It's good to have an expertise in something, right? We definitely don't want you to be a jack of all trades, but always look for professional development opportunities. Projects mature, just like organizations mature, you want to mature, you want to grow, you want to evolve, and you want to accept creativities from others, right? Because that only makes you a better project manager and a better leader, right? Third, most of all, take care of yourself. Mental health, physical health, right? Because we can be stuck in a project, become a micromanager or be micromanaged, right? But only thinking about the end result of this project and don't realize everything is deteriorating around us, like physically, mentally, we're stuck in this and we're unable to escape. So always, right, look for opportunities to kind of like relax, take a vacation, take a pulse,
Take a vacation? Oh
take a
my goodness.
vacation.
Oh
Yes.
goodness. Okay. That's on my list now.
But think about it. We don't do that, right?
I know. I know.
We're so focused on the end result, right? We have this 3-year goal, we have this 4-year goal, and none of those 4-year goals includes us taking a break.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're so focused. We're afraid that we take a 2-week vacation, things are going to fall apart.
That's right. That's right.
But if you have the right people and you're confident in their skill set, that's why you brought them on board, you coach them, you mentor them. They know everything's in alignment. They know what you want. They know what the client wants. You could take that break and you need that break. Right?
For sure. For sure. These are just so great tips. I want to just say this for everyone actually listening to us today. You've heard it all. It comes to from communication to delegation to ensuring that you have a path and a plan to create the life that you actually crave. It is actually possible. It takes action, but take time to improve and work on yourself. But above all, with all you've actually heard today, I say when you hear about something great, you definitely need to share. I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Iman for actually being here. This has been long coming. We know that we can go on and on and on, but I can't even believe that time has actually gone so fast. You definitely need to come back on the show. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who have actually joined us today. Please, please, please share this with someone because I know that this will benefit someone and this will add value. I cannot wait to see you and celebrate more of your successes. But I always say this, You are your life's project manager. What does that mean? Make your life's project count for something. Be it at work, be it at home, be it any way you actually show up. Self-development, focusing on execution and adding value. Be that person that will not just try to push to go forward, but pull others as well. Because it takes a village to actually get the outcomes that we definitely want. If you want to find out more about how we can support you, how we can actually keep grooming you to become the strategic project leaders you've always wanted, you can find us on strategicprojectleader.com. And to learn more about Fola, go to folaalabi.com. I want to say thank you so much for everyone that the names that I can see. Tarika, we see Lakon there, we see Titi. It's just been a great pleasure. And Joseph, oh God, our regulars here as a Digital Edge actually joined us. We want to say thank you so, so much. And don't forget, set your reminders. Same time next week, we're going to be having a great leader to come in and share their hearts as well. You do not want to miss it. Have yourself a wonderful one and see you next week. Bye-bye.